Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Rushcliffe series. This is the southernmost district in Nottinghamshire and it contains 59 civil parishes of England. And there's some corkers down here. Let's dive in and check one out. Welcome back to Rushcliffe again, everybody, and to another linear village that's taken me all of about 5 or 10 minutes to walk from one end to the other, and this main route will just be simply a walk straight back to the car. Even though it's really small, it does have some amazing landmarks, and there's one in particular that I know you're going to love. Welcome to the parish of Thoroton. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Thoroton, Thurfeth's farm. This week in Rushcliffe we find ourselves in a tiny linear village just north of Aslockton. That would be Thoroton, which hasn't grown much since the time of Domesday. Once located close to an important Roman road, namely the Fosse Way, this is now a conservation village with 3 major landmarks. With varying degrees of history, they are Thoroton Hall, the Thoroton Dovecote and the Church of St Helena. Without question, the most eye-opening of those is the Dovecote. Standing part-way along the narrow village street, it once stood much taller, with the capacity for more than 600 birds at one time. Part of the village is owned by the Labour peer Baron Thoroton, who lets out his property to tenants. Historically speaking, Thoroton's most famous resident was arguably Ethel Gordon Fenwick, a nurse who campaigned vigorously for their state registration. Fenwick died in 1947 and isn't buried in the village, but the church here still has a memorial to her. Incidentally, the church is notable for another reason too. Historians reckon both it and Southwell Minster may have had the same master mason, thanks to a telltale sign on the external wall of its tower. So, with a lot to take in for such a small place, this is Thoroton. It's a short walk, but one of the best so far in Rushcliffe. We start at the southern end of the main road through the village. This seemingly goes by 2 names, Cliff Hill Lane and or Main Street. It seems you have to take your pick. This is a village dominated by farming. Indeed, the southern end has several historic barns and outbuildings. Part of the village is owned by the Falconer family, who let their properties to tenants. Baron Falconer of Thoroton, better known by his given name Charles, is a British Labour peer and barrister who served as Lord Chancellor and Secretary of State for Justice under Prime Minister Tony Blair from 2003 to 2007. Rather ironically, even though property here is owned by a Labour peer, the current MP is the Conservative Party politician Ruth Edwards. That's a fact I learned by way of the parish notice board, and regardless of your political persuasion, this now displays a TVI card. Mark it off. Now, even though Thoroton is a tiny village, it still has a bus service. Here's the proof. From this stop you can catch the 856 and the 857 according to Google. Nearby we have a phone box, and this one's been converted into a cabinet for a defib machine. They are as important here as they are in towns. Next, we come to an information board which gives us some great stuff about the village, including a lot about its most prized possession, the Thoroton Dovecote. Once belonging to Thoroton Hall, this is Nottinghamshire's only remaining thatched medieval dovecote. In 1965 it was granted a Grade 2 listing when it still housed pigeons in some 480 nest boxes. It was in all probability once much taller and had 600 boxes instead. It's believed it was similar therefore to the one at Sibthorpe, just a few miles north of Thoroton. In 1989, part of the farm it once stood within was built over. Next we come to two properties which would have been way more important centuries ago. This one is the Manor House, and almost directly opposite are the tall imposing gates of Thoroton Hall. The main purpose of the Dovecote would have been to feed the residents of these properties. Thoroton Hall is Grade 2 listed. Dating from the 18th century, you'll likely note the distinctive blue diaper work. That's a posh term for a checkerboard pattern. Its most famous resident was Ethel Gordon Fenwick, the Scottish-born nurse who went on to be the matron of St Bartholomew's Hospital. For the next few shots it's all residential, so here's a bit more about Ethel Fenwick. After moving to the village as a little girl, Fenwick's nursing career began at the Nottingham Children's Hospital in 1881. From that point on, her life was dedicated to the nursing profession. Indeed, it was down to her that nurses would eventually become state registered, after her relentless campaigning for it. As a result, Fenwick was the first nurse to become state registered in 1921. Fenwick died in 1947, and although her grave is not in Thoroton, the church does have a memorial to her. Let's take a look at that church then, shall we? Here it stands on Church Lane, and it's another with a tall spire. Dedicated to St Helena, this is a Grade 1 listed building. There are several clues as to its origins, most notably a 12th century Norman arch that's built into the external wall of the vestry and a carved consecration cross. The niche on the tower's wall is 14th century and would have originally held a statue. Perhaps most interestingly, the niche is often likened to the screen at Southwell Minster, suggesting they maybe had the same master mason. I'd say that's pretty likely. The white property found adjacent to the churchyard is Manor Farmhouse, a mid-17th century building built in an L-shaped plan with 2 stories. What I would give to live in a house like that. In fact, generally speaking, Thoroton is a place you would think is very sought after in terms of property. It's likely pretty expensive out here, but isn't it worth it? The open fields, the period properties, and the sound of birdsong punctuated only by farm vehicles is surely a homeowner's dream. You can see why Thoroton ranks high on my list of places visited so far in Rushcliffe. With that, we reach the end of Thoroton, a linear village with not a lot really going on community-wise, but there are some amazing landmarks here. Such a pretty place too, very quiet as well. And I just think to myself, the British countryside, the English countryside, is just magnificent, isn't it? Love it. That'll do us for Thoroton then, everyone. What a great little village that's been to cover. Even though it's tiny, it packs in a lot, doesn't it? I loved every second of that walk. Next week we're off to a bigger one, this time a place which was famous for its plaster, and I'm not talking about the medical ones. See you later. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.